Good evening. I'm Leland Vittert. Even by 2021 standards, it has been an exceptionally busy news day and news weekend, and things are not nearly over yet. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial is still going now at 6 o'clock Central Time. The prosecution is wrapping up its rebuttal right now. The judge will likely call it a night before deliberations begin tomorrow. If anything notable comes up in the trial, we're going to cut to it live. We're going to also dive into the most consequential moments of the trial and what that means for Rittenhouse's defense and the possibility of an acquittal a little bit later. As we speak, the National Guard is on standby in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as the trial winds down. What the prosecution's arguments mean for gun rights is another big part of this story. We're going to talk about it. Also, President Biden is trying to bring the Chinese back into line during a virtual meeting with their communist president. But will Mr. Biden speak a language Beijing understands? Mr. Biden had hoped to put a win on the board today, but a spat between his staff and the vice president's staff now overshadows a much-needed victory lap. And that's where we start, in Washington. Obviously, we'll go to the White House if President Biden speaks about his meeting with the Chinese. It starts in about 45 minutes, so we get a readout later tonight. But first, the president signed his $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan today. The bill passed, as you might remember, with 19 Republican senators and 13 Republican House members. Some of them were there today to celebrate. It includes over $500 billion in new spending projects like roads, bridges, broadband. Also, there's some more questionable spending, like pumping another $66 billion into Amtrak. News of the bill's passing did little to help the president's approval numbers, which sit around those of his predecessor. The only person less popular in D.C. than President Biden is his vice president, who is under 28%. No other vice president in history has been so disliked. Nobody. Which is what makes today's news cycle so bizarre. On a day when the White House should be singularly focused on celebrating their first win since July 4th, Press Secretary Jen Psaki threw a wild pitch last night with this tweet. For anyone who needs to hear it, the vice president is not only a vital partner to the president, but a bold leader who has taken on key important challenges facing the country. It sparked a fury of calls from editors to reporters interrupting Sunday night dinner and Sunday night football watching. What on earth was this about? Certainly for the press secretary to issue such an unusual statement, something must be going on. Turns out the tweet was because of this Sunday afternoon article on CNN Digital that nobody was talking about. But now they are. The headline, Exasperation and Dysfunction Inside Kamala Harris's Frustrating Start as Vice President. Quote from the article, many in the vice president's circle fume that she's not being adequately prepared or positioned and instead is being sidelined. Some think it's the president himself leaving her out in the cold, prioritizing his own agenda. Some blame specific West Wing aides whom they feel sure are out to undercut her. Again, the story isn't about Harris's abysmal approval ratings or the Biden White House blame game, but why? Why draw attention to the least popular part of your administration when trying to celebrate a win? Chris Stirewalt knows a thing or two about how to celebrate a win because he's covered a number of them. Longtime political reporter, columnist, now senior fellow at AEI. Good to see you, Chris. If Psaki's tweet was true, would she have needed to say it?
Well, I mean, there's true and then there's true. The number one thing you want from a vice president is to do nothing. The best thing that a vice president can do is be no one should think about the vice president, and that's pretty much how you want it. It's great if the vice president can do what people like Dick Cheney, what Joe Biden, what some others have done, which is help you with your base or a part of your political coalition that maybe you don't connect well with. Joe Biden did that. But Kamala Harris is not a good politician. She is not good at this. Her presidential campaign demonstrated that she's not good at this. She's not competent at politics, and certainly on the policy stuff. The places where Biden tried to put her forward, border crisis and other things, she did not seem to deliver results or at least the appearance of them. So then what you want from your vice president is to do nothing. Don't be a problem, right? This is Al Gore, George H.W. Bush. History has a lot of potted plant vice presidents. But what do you do if you have a vice president who you need to be a potted plant, but that person wants to play an active role? Let's say this person is thinking about maybe they're going to be running for president in 2024. Maybe they're just feeling bad that people dislike or ignore them. And then you've got to do something to calm them down. I read that tweet as an effort to calm down Harris and her team.
Yeah, and then we saw this today on the south lawn of the White House. The Daily Mail called it the Hug-a-thon, I believe is how they viewed it. But their headline was, hug it out, bro it out, on and on. Kamala Harris saying, oh, thank you, Mr. President. Biden saying, oh, thank you to the vice president, on and on. I guess it goes back to this. If your approval numbers were in the 60, best of frenemies is how they headlined. Joe and Kamala put on cringeworthy united front in bid to quash CNN claims of major rift. VP gushing thanks to Mr. President on behalf of the nation. Those words would almost make Mike Pence blush.
And that would be a lot.
Yeah.
That would be a lot.
That would be sucking up in a new way.
No offense to, I'm sure, the Daily Mail's deep understanding of the functioning of the West Wing. I kid. What do you do when you are in this situation? If you telegraph publicly, we are united, then people say, oh, see, that's further evidence of a problem. But if you don't do anything, then what are they going to say? Well, that's further evidence of a problem, because that's the parlor game in Washington.
It makes an interesting point, though. If they were at 60% approval ratings, right, and things were just humming along, would this story have happened?
Well, this is a story we love. We always love the Washington press corps loves this story. At any point where you can find the friction, if there's problems inside the administration, that's just catnip. And what you read in Politico and what you've seen other places is the frustration, understandable frustrations among an ambitious vice president and her ambitious team that want her to be more and do more, even though she's demonstrated that she's not really an asset. She has not delivered on the things that Biden had hoped that she might. And when you get to that point, if you can't find a way to placate her, if you can't find a way so that she will be okay, then you go into an isolation phase. And if you get into that part, then, and this will depend on the decency and patriotic attitude of the vice president, the possibility exists that they will continue to feed into that narrative, and it will continue to be part of this. This is a long-term problem for Joe Biden that is rooted in the fact that it is unclear by a long shot that he will be the Democratic Party's nominee in 2024, and that is the underpinning for all of this.
Well, and the underpinning of their relationship did not start well. We all remember this from the then Democratic nominee debate back at the beginning of the race. Take a listen.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a lot of trust between them in a real sense.
Well, I think you can trust with Kamala Harris that she will say whatever she thinks it is that she thinks she needs to say to get ahead. Again, her career has been marked by this. Ambition is a good thing. Mr. Madison's system relies on the ambition of politicians. But remember, she said that, and then she said the other thing, and she said she was for universal single-payer health care. Then she was against it. She was for the Green New Deal. She was against it. She is nothing if not accommodating in her worldview. The problem is she just isn't good at it, right? The problem is that she has never lived up to her potential, and she has turned into a drag for Biden, who doesn't need any more drags. But what do you do about a problem like Kamala, right? What are you supposed to do now? And there just aren't any easy answers because you're lashed to this person for the next 3 years.
Well, not only that, but your agenda that you're trying to get through, conceivably she could have been a big help with lobbying fellow senators during both Build Back Better and bipartisan infrastructure. Clearly, that didn't deliver there, didn't deliver with the progressive caucuses. Still, though, Jen Psaki today put on a brave face. Not only did we have the tweet last night, it's been a day-long cleanup on aisle Kamala Harris-Joe Biden relationship. Take a listen.
I went out there and made clear that the vice president's a vital partner. She's a bold leader, and she's taken on some challenging assignments, really important ones.
I guess the bigger question is, to your point, who really cares from the White House's perspective how happy the vice president is? Why bother?
Oh, man, if she's not happy, then you've got a big problem because there's going to be more leaks. There's going to be more frustration. There's going to be more backbiting. And it becomes a worse and worse problem. So you've got to find a way to do it. It's not a surprise that people in Washington today are talking about maybe they'll appoint her to the Supreme Court if a vacancy comes available because they got to do something. I doubt that's what she really want to do. I bet she still thinks that she might be president. but you got to do something with this person whose ambition does not match their talents.
Supreme Court Justice Kamala Harris is perhaps nothing anyone had on their 2021 or 2022 bingo card. Chris, good to see you, my friend.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you. Now on to what the Biden administration wants everybody to be talking about today. Here's the president taking a victory lap a little earlier.
The bill I'm about to sign along is proof that despite the cynics, Democrats and Republicans can come together and deliver results. We can do this. We can deliver real results for real people. And we're taking a monumental step forward to build back better as a nation.
We're going to hear a lot about Build Back Better as Vice President Kamala Harris, who we were just talking about, came back from a rather uneventful trip to Paris over the weekend and promised, as the president just did, that this was the beginning, not the end, of remaking America's social contract.
Now, this bill, as significant as it is, as historic as it is part one of two: to lower costs and cut taxes for working families, to tackle the climate crisis at its core. Congress must also pass the Build Back Better Act.
Few congressmen have advocated more for Build Back Better than Ro Khanna, Deputy Whip for the Progressive Caucus from California, joining us from Washington, D.C. Congressman, we appreciate you being with us. Is there going to be a vote on this week?
I hope so. There certainly will be a vote on it in the next couple of weeks. It depends on when we get the CBO score, but the plan is to try to do it this week. But it was a big win today. I mean, bipartisan bill that the president delivered. You could see the energy at the White House signing ceremony that I was honored to attend.
Well, I know you had a lot to do with it. You also had a lot to do with bringing the Progressive Caucus along to vote for the infrastructure plan before Build Back Better, which had at one point been linked. We talk about Build Back Better. The vote in the House is in a way academic because the vote that really matters is the vote in the Senate. Joe Manchin, most powerful man in D.C. without a nuclear code, we saw this. Joe Manchin objects to another Build Back Better policy, everything the senator is opposed: paid family leave, tax credit for union-made electric vehicles, clean energy performance program, Medicare expansions. If he opposes all of those things and sticks to his guns, is there a Build Back Better plan?
There is, and I've spoken with Senator Manchin. There are a lot of things he's for. He's for the child tax credit, which would be $300 for every working family with kids. He's for universal preschool. He's for the child care provision. So, and he's for actually a lot of climate provisions, the investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Of course, there's going to be a compromise, but I believe it'll be around the president's framework, and I think he will get to a yes.
Okay, so in other words, you'd be okay with a Build Back Better bill that didn't include the four things that the senator's against?
Those things, most of those things are not in the president's framework that he presented to Congress. So what the president presented was already a compromise. Obviously, I'd be for the policies you mentioned, but the president was pretty realistic, and he said, look, this is what he thinks he can get passed. And I think around that framework is where the party will come together. You
think about what's in this bill, and obviously when you've got something with $1.75 trillion, you're talking about 1,700 stacks of $1 billion. It's a remarkable amount of money. This is one thing that caught our eye that was in it. A $1.3 billion provision in this bill to give $12,500 to every local newspaper employee in the country. I know the First Amendment enshrines the right to a free press, but doesn't enshrine that we will be paid for one. Is subsidizing the media really consistent with sort of keeping government out of people's lives?
Well, that money is actually going to go to rural newspapers. A lot of those newspapers may have a conservative slant. I'm for helping rural newspapers in this country. I'm for helping community papers. It's not going to the New York Times or the Washington Post or the big national papers, but I think every community in this country should have their local paper. And more generally, you know, $1.75 trillion is over 10 years, and it's actually less than 1% of our GDP, and it's far less than our defense budget. It's, our defense over 10 years is about $7.5 trillion. So I think we have to put the numbers in context.
It's interesting when you say this, because both of these plans, you rightly point out, and you've done so on the program before, bipartisan infrastructure, 65%, 31% opposed. Build Back Better, 62% support, 35% oppose. It's hard to get people to agree on what kind of ice cream they like anymore, much less 65% of Americans supporting something. Given these numbers, why has it been so hard to get done?
This is democracy. You know, we're not China. We're not Russia. President doesn't get up and say, do what I want. It's tough, and it's supposed to be tough. We all represent different interests, different constituencies. You know, that's how democracy is supposed to work. And I'm proud that we got it done with infrastructure. I'm proud we're going to get it done eventually with Build Back Better, and it's going to be in the next few weeks. And I don't apologize for having a democratic system. I'm glad we have that as opposed to Xi Jinping's system.
Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about that system here in a few minutes. Real quick, though, is there a contingency plan if Manchin digs in his heels on more and the president's framework falls apart?
The president is as committed to this as anything. He needs to get it done, and he believes, as I do, that this will cut costs, cut child care costs, cut insurance costs, cut prescription drug costs. He is the person who can convince Senator Manchin, and I'm confident he will. If not, you know, I mean, I think he will continue to fight for the agenda. But I believe that Senator Manchin wants to have this happen.
All right, sounds good. Congressman, it's always good to see you. We appreciate you taking the time, especially as I know you're busy up on the Hill whipping votes, sir.
Well, congratulations on the new show. Always great to be on.
Oh, well, thank you. Good to see you. Closing arguments in the Rittenhouse trial have wrapped up. The jury will be deciding Rittenhouse's fate starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to break down the most important moments in court, tell you why the National Guard's on standby. Also, the issues at the southern border are getting worse and worse. New exclusive video of an MS-13 gang member arrested over the weekend. This is new video just into NewsNation from overnight at the U.S.-Mexico border. This is on a ranch just off the Rio Grande. But for the dragnets by the Texas Highway Patrol and Texas Rangers, all the illegal immigrants you're seeing in this video would be well on their way into the United States, including one with a conviction of aggravated robbery who was deported and then came back. Tonight, our friends at the Hill report that the situation on the border is a lot worse than you think. Border Patrol caught 4 known MS-13 gang members in a 13-hour span. 2 of them had been deported before. Lieutenant Chris Olivarez, the Texas Department of Public Safety, is quite literally on the front lines and joins us now from West Texas as the sun gets ready to set and the coyotes and smugglers come out. Lieutenant, good to see you. Help us understand the difference between what Border Patrol is doing processing all of these migrants who come across on federal land and what you guys are doing on the ranches.
Right. So great to be with you again, Leland. Thanks again for having me on. So what we're doing that's so different compared to prior operations along the border is that Texas DPS troopers are now on these ranch properties on the ground, walking these properties, looking for these large groups of illegal immigrants that are coming across, as well as working the train yards. That's never been done before by our men and women. And it's being done right now because U.S. Border Patrol is stretched thin. They're overwhelmed with manpower. They're stuck processing. They're not in the field doing what they're good at. And that's detecting these large groups that are coming across and detecting drugs. So we're having to fill that void, those gaps by patrolling those areas. And this is what we're coming across on those videos. And some of these members that are coming across with these groups, criminal gang members, as you showed there, we came across a group a couple of days ago, large group of 25 illegal immigrants that came across a ranch. That particular individual had served time in a Texas prison, a seven-year term in a Texas prison for aggravated robbery and was wanted for ICE for a deportation felony. So again, these are not your asylum seekers. That's one thing the viewers need to understand, that these are not the asylum seekers that are coming across. These are single adults that are avoiding detection, trying to move further inland. And again, these are the individuals that are coming across our borders.
Yeah, so if we look at these groups, and I know you encounter them day in, day out, and you can charge them with state crimes, which puts a whole different bend on it than the federal people who are federal crimes or federal immigration laws that are just processed through. So the state crimes can carry a little bit more teeth. Is this a case of a bunch of people who just want a better life in America and 1 or 2 bad apples who sneak in with them? Or these groups of people who, but for escaping your guys, would end up committing crimes throughout America?
You know, and that's what we're seeing. And that's a good question right there. The group that we came across last night, I was out last night with our Texas DPS troopers on a ranch, and we apprehended 21 illegal immigrants. Majority of those fled from us on foot. They ran from us. So we had to chase them down. And with the support of our DPS aircraft, we're able to locate them. So again, some of these individuals are resisting our law enforcement. They're resisting apprehension, and they're avoiding detection. So again, these are individuals that are coming across our borders. And that particular group, I mean, we asked them, where were they going? What's the reason coming across the border? A lot of them just say they want to come and work. They don't have a significant reason to actually be across or come across the border. And that's what we're seeing. In that particular group, we have people from Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico that came across that particular group. So again, different countries that are coming across and trying to move further inland with really no significant reason as far as to coming across here.
Yeah, so you have the people who are coming to work, and then, as you point out, inside those groups, you've got gang members and sex traffickers and everybody else. Encounters with migrants from different countries rose dramatically. Ecuador way up, Brazil way up, Nicaragua way up, by multiple orders of magnitude, these additional numbers. There's kind of these two messages, right, that we are, I don't know what this is. Do you think the Biden administration, by executive order, okay, Ecuador, 95,000 encounters. You can see just the huge spikes over time. You got these two contradictory messages, right? President Biden's campaign promises that are being used by the cartels to get people to buy into their smuggling programs. And then you've got your message from the Texas Department of Public Safety and Governor Abbott, who says if you come here, you're going to be arrested on state charges. Net, what are the cartels here, and what are the people wanting to come here for work here?
So that's, first of all, that's the reason right there. That's the issue right there, is the messaging. The messaging from day one from the federal government was to come to the U.S., that you will be released into the country. And they've seen that firsthand with families and friends that have come across that made that journey and get released into the country. So that messaging is also being exploited by the cartels and the smuggling organizations because they're profiting off of this current crisis for now. So they want these individuals to come across our borders because, again, that's money for them. And again, what we talked about earlier is these individuals that are coming across, it all has to do with the messaging right now. And of course, our message is that you come across Texas, you will be arrested. But again, now trying to incentivize some of these illegal immigrants by paying them, up to $450,000 a head, that's not going to help the cause right now. And again, organizations are going to continue to profit off of that and use that messaging to their advantage.
Yeah, well, they certainly have been. And we'll let you guys get to work tonight. Thanks for being with us, sir. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Godspeed. Be safe. We should know Kyle Rittenhouse's fate perhaps by the end of the week, what the verdict will mean for gun laws and self-defense in America. Plus, Steve Bannon coming out swinging after appearing in court for the first time today. But why do we care? And is this just putting Bannon back in the spotlight?
If the administrative state wants to take me on, bring it. Because we're here to fight this, and we're going to go on offense.
You lose the right to self-defense when you're the one who brought the gun.
That's the prosecutor delivering his closing arguments in the murder case against Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse killed 2 and shot 1 other during riots last summer in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He claims self-defense, a position well supported with video and testimony. Here's Rittenhouse's defense attorney taking the DA to task.
When his case explodes in his face, now he comes out with provocation. But Mr. Binger will use this video to lie to your faces. This case is not a game. It is my client's life.
The National Guard is on standby. The jury begins its deliberations tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Doug Burns, longtime federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, joins us. Doug, good to see you. This just struck me. You lose the right to self-defense when you're the one who brought the gun. I'm not a lawyer, you are, but that just flies in the face of everything I've ever known about criminal procedure and law in America.
Couldn't agree with you more, Leland. That's an absolutely incorrect statement. And he may pay a big price for that. I mean, the point is, the prosecutors tried to characterize the fact that he had a gun as, sort of automatically illegal. It's so interesting because the one count of having a gun ostensibly illegally was thrown out by the court. So again, the correct statement of law, real quick, is apparently the judge really gave them quite a big gift, which is that if the person provokes the encounter, then they may lose their right to self-defense. But you can't go wildly over the ski tip saying if he brought the gun, that's it, there's no self-defense. That's not what that instruction entails. That instruction means that if I'm in an encounter with somebody and I'm the initial aggressor, I provoke the initial situation, there may be questions about me then subsequently invoking self-defense. So the prosecutor made a number of mistakes throughout the trial, and he made a number of mistakes today, Leland.
Yeah, it just seemed like a really very, very poorly planned prosecution. This was another one of the sound bites that caught our eye from the prosecutors. Take a listen. Rioters, heroes.
Every day we read about heroes that stop active shooters. That's what was going on here.
Prosecution talking about one guy who was beating Rittenhouse with a skateboard. I guess my question here is that the prosecutors just tried to make this about Rittenhouse being there with an AR-15, which you could call stupid, you can call irresponsible, you can call the fact that his parents allowed him to be there and his friend gave him an AR-15 ridiculously reckless. But none of those things are illegal, and I'm wondering what it tells you that the prosecution is trying to make that the issue rather than the events that led up to the shooting.
Well, it tells me that they had a weak case in the sense that the self-defense defense put up was much better and more effective than they probably anticipated. So they started throwing a number of Hail Marys. But to call him an active shooter, I'll give you a little sort of inside baseball point. Jurors are very, very smart, Leland. So the point is, an active shooter is somebody who goes to a venue, a location, and just indiscriminately guns people down. That is not what's going on here on any level. And jurors, trust me, are going to pick up on that and say, wow, I can't believe he called him an active shooter. That is simply not accurate at all. And when a prosecutor loses some credibility, that's where the trouble starts kicking in.
This would be sort of the last-ditch effort. At one point in the trial, right before we came on the air, one of the prosecutors was talking about how he brought an AR-15 to a fist fight because he wasn't prepared to get beat up. And it sort of became this very personal thought about whether Rittenhouse had courage and how he acted as a man versus anything else. But it all goes back to this argument by the prosecutors of whether Rittenhouse was there looking for a fight. Here's the prosecutor saying that kind of doesn't matter because Rittenhouse's actions were never legally justified.
The question is whether or not you believe that his actions were legally justified. And I submit to you that no reasonable person would have done what the defendant did. And that makes your decision easy.
He may have a point that no reasonable person would show up in Kenosha, Wisconsin in the midst of a BLM and Antifa riot with an AR-15 to go protect a business you had no association with at 17 years old. We can agree on that, perhaps. But is the issue whether or not he should have been there, or is the issue would a reasonable person shoot somebody who was beating him over the head with a skateboard or grabbing his gun or had pulled a gun on him?
No, you've encapsulated the whole key to understanding this case, which is that it's two separate discussions. One is around the dining room table, which is he shouldn't have been there, it was poor judgment, and so forth, as you said. And then two is the ability to separate that out and say that once he's there, okay, if somebody presents him with deadly force, he's entitled to defend himself with deadly force. So the way to crystallize this point you're making, which I agree with 100%, Leland, is that, okay, poor judgment to go there, fine. But you don't charge somebody with murder and seek to put them in prison for the rest of their life. Yeah,
evidently now the jury is able to talk about what they call the lesser included charges, not necessarily murder, but manslaughter and the like. Deliberations begin tomorrow morning. This might go on for a while, Counselor, so we'll be talking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. There's also protests right now going on outside the courthouse. There's nothing going on inside, but you can see a smattering of folks outside the courthouse. The National Guard is on standby. There's 500 National Guard troops there. In addition, the local police are on standby. Chicago police, 70 miles away, have canceled days off because of potential for unrest. And then we've also had reports of businesses boarding up throughout Kenosha. The scars there are still very deep from the riots last summer when that city really burned. Take a look at some of the video from earlier today that we have. That's a little bit larger group there. The people who were shot and killed, two of them who were shot and killed were white. Third person shot and injured, white as well. Have not exactly some really positive parts of their background, shall we say, that have certainly made them less perhaps sympathetic victims, which has been part of this. And you can see the big issue right now, at least for BLM, has been the issue with the judge. We talked about that a lot. That's become an issue on MSNBC, and a number of other channels have really criticized the judge in this case. Certainly, if Rittenhouse is acquitted, the judge will become a huge part of this story. That's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The other big legal development happened in Washington, D.C. today. Take a listen.
By the way, not just Trump people and not just conservatives. Every progressive and every liberal in this country that likes freedom of speech and liberty, okay, should be fighting for this case. That's why I'm here today. For everybody, I'm never going to back down. And they took on the wrong guy this time, okay?
A rather disheveled Steve Bannon on the courthouse steps, former advisor to President Trump, now borderline conspiracy theorist podcaster. He's out of jail on charges of contempt of Congress. Yes, you can be arrested for that. He turned himself in this morning for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, also refused to turn over documents related to the events of that day. Bannon joined President Trump in the White House as a senior advisor before a falling out with the former president. Since then, he's worked as a self-promoter of the MAGA agenda with a bend towards the fringe of the Republican Party. For example, today, Bannon live streamed his trip to the federal courthouse on his podcast. It's called War Room Pandemic. Robert Ray was part of the independent counsel investigation into then President Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, defended a number of high-profile folks against similar charges to what Mr. Bannon faces now. Robert, good to see you. Other than self-promotion, is there a reason for Bannon to have not just taken the fifth in front of the January 6th commission and called it a day?
He would have had to appear, of course, to do that. And, you know, if he appears, of course, I think what he was probably trying to do was avoid the sideshow as well as the, you know, the media frenzy that was going to be present if he had appeared to do that in person. And he doesn't, you know, I don't think he has to take the fifth. He has a perfectly justifiable reason for not appearing, given the fact that the former president invoked executive privilege, and that issue is currently being litigated before the federal courts in the District of Columbia, and there's a case pending in the D.C. Circuit, which is subject to oral argument next month. So, you know, his defense to any misdemeanor charge of contempt is going to be advice of counsel, reliance on counsel that instructed him that, given the fact that the former president invoked executive privilege, until that issue was resolved, he was not free or at liberty to appear before Congress. That will be, you know, in all likelihood, his defense. I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, it sounds like you sort of believe that he has a leg to stand on here. You said he wanted to avoid the show. I've never seen Steve Bannon shy away from a media circus, as we saw today. He was more than happy to come out swinging. This was where I was getting at with the Fifth Amendment defense. From the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Bannon could decline to answer questions by invoking his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself, but he can't refuse to appear or to turn over subpoenaed documents, which is the second count of the indictment. How is it that Bannon can claim protection from President Trump's executive privilege assertion when he's been out of the administration for 3 years?
The Justice Department has had a policy, though, over a number of administrations and over a number of years that the privilege does extend, if properly invoked, to a former president and people who you know, have worked for a former president. Now, you know, I think what he's going to claim is that even though he wasn't currently in the administration, executive privilege doesn't necessarily depend on actually being an employee of the federal government at the time that advice is rendered. I mean, you know, the president is free to consult with whomever he chooses, and you would hope that even in an informal context, you know, he shouldn't, or the people that he speaks to shouldn't be subject to subpoena by Congress to get behind the protection that is inherent in executive branch communications, irrespective of whether or not the person that the president speaks to is currently serving as an executive branch employee.
Interesting. A couple of Republican operatives have told me that they've never seen anybody as excited to be as indicted as Steve Bannon is now that he has somebody to fight about and has an excuse to be back on CNN. So we'll see how it goes. Robert, good to see you as always. Thanks. We apologize for the audio problems. I know you suffered through with us. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, President Biden is going to be meeting with the Chinese president tonight. What they want and what they will likely not come to an agreement on. What's not said might be most important when we come back. .47 in Washington, D.C. right now. It's already been a busy day for President Biden. As we talked about, he signed his new infrastructure bill into law, and he's following that up as we speak with a high-stakes virtual meeting with the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. The two met a couple of times during Biden's time as VP, but this summit comes at a time when tensions between the Chinese and the United States over things like Taiwan, trade, and human rights probably have never been higher, with the possible exception of Tiananmen Square. NewsNation's Kellie Meyer is here to break down what's at stake and what to watch for. Hi, Kellie.
Hey, Leland. Well, you're right. This first virtual meeting is happening at a time of escalating tensions between these two superpowers, both economically and militarily. China is scaling up its defense in Taiwan, which it considers part of the mainland, sending military aircraft into Taiwanese airspace, while the U.S. is committed to defending Taiwan. There's also China's human rights record. The State Department has called China's treatment of the ethnic minority group known as the Uyghur genocide. Human rights activists are calling for a boycott of the upcoming Beijing Olympics because of China's human rights abuses. No word if that will be brought up in the meeting tonight, Leland. We also don't know if tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on Chinese goods entering the U.S. will be a topic of discussion. The Chinese are calling this, quote, a critical crossroads, and the White House warning China must play by the rules of the road.
It's always interesting to listen to the Chinese turn it around and act like victims on that. You've got this loaded warning coming from the White House, and then you've got China with this history of breaking their word on just about everything. How clear-eyed is the White House on the Chinese willingness to lie?
Well, they think that there was a renewed willingness on the Chinese part to come to the table here. And as you mentioned, this isn't the first time Biden and Xi will be meeting. They got to know one another while they were both serving as vice presidents. But Biden says he isn't going to go easy on the Chinese leader. The White House saying, quote, that he's going to make his intentions clear while ensuring competition with China doesn't escalate into conflict. The White House says they are seeing, again, that increased willingness on their part. But whether that willingness leads to some sort of breakthrough depends on what happens in these next few hours. Leland?
Yeah, I've yet to see anybody be all that optimistic about a breakthrough, but we'll wait and we'll see. Kellie, thank you.
Thank you.
We're deluding ourselves for so long, right? We assumed that cooperation and engagement with China would change China, right? And that China would, play by the rules.
Yeah, China's never played by the rules, frankly. That's former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster talking about the Biden administration plan to approach China. As we speak, President Biden and the Chinese are on the phone in what the White House touts as a chance to reset the relationship, a little bit what Kellie was talking about. Right now, it's the Australians, of all people, who are standing up to the Chinese. The Daily Mail reports China threatens Australia with a heavy attack and warns allied forces better be prepared to sacrifice in defense of Taiwan after Peter Dutton, that's the Australian defense minister, confirmed that Australia would join the United States in protecting the island if we actually did join in protecting the island. We know President Biden's going to spend a lot of time talking about Taiwan with Xi. This is the touchscreen right now to show you what we're talking about. This is South Korea up here, obviously a huge U.S. military presence. We know that there's a very small U.S. military presence here on the island of Taiwan. This is an area that the Chinese view as their sovereign territory. It's only 100 miles here, and the Chinese have been practicing invasion drills all along this coastline, very similar to the Taiwan coastline. And there's a lot of thought that you'd only have 6 or 10 hours from the time the Chinese launched an invasion for the president to make a decision whether or not the U.S. was willing to go to war over Taiwan, which makes what's being said on this call all the more important. With that, we bring in Robert Wilke, expert in military readiness, previously Under-Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Good to see you, Mr. Secretary. We appreciate it. Is there any reason to think that President Biden is going to say something to the Chinese that'll get their attention?
Well, absolutely not, and he shouldn't even be having this because there's nothing that he could say, even if he's inclined to talk tough, that the Chinese would be able to deliver. You're a top international affairs correspondent. You know you don't go into these kinds of discussions without having in advance an agreement on what's going to come out of it. And that's the sad thing about this. I think the Chinese also take it as a sign of weakness that there is this constant mantra from the State Department and the National Security Council that the be-all and end-all when it comes to international affairs is just discussions. And that, I think, gives the Chinese an opening to continue to advance their agenda. They have no fear of this administration. They've already humiliated the Secretary of State. They did that in March by simply reading back President Biden's own woke critique of his own country. Had that been Ronald Reagan or Richard Nixon, they would have walked out and said, we're not going to be lectured by a country that's murdered 100 million of its own people since 1949.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, I'm going to have to apologize to you. We unfortunately went long, so we don't have more time, but I want to have you back later this week if you'll do it and talk a little bit more about this. You're so clear-eyed on the issue of China. It's an important one that we've got to stay with. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Leland.
Thank you. My apologies. When we come back, a quick look at where America is and where we came from. Are we really as divided as we think we are? Well, there's a common refrain these days that never before has America been so divided. We didn't have public polling really available during the Civil War. Public polling was in its infancy during the Vietnam War. So we decided to go all the way back to the Revolution. We want to bring in Joe Ellis, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, author of the book The Cause, The American Revolution and Its Discontents, 1773 to 1783. Professor, were we more discontented then or today?
It's pretty comparable. I do think the deepest discontent we've ever suffered was during the Civil War. So but I go back to the Revolution, and that's what the current book is about. I think there are a lot of arguments that are very similar. I mean, we were also going through a pandemic then. 100,000 people died of smallpox, and they had big arguments then about whether they should vaccinate. But the big difference that is similar is the argument over government, whether government is us, collective, or whether it's them, the other side, the enemy. And in some ways, the War for Independence was fought on that, and them was Parliament. But in the wake of the war and during the war, there was, at the local level, very few people who looked to the Continental Congress as anything other than a foreign power. And that cost us because we couldn't put together our taxes and troops to win the war more quickly. But government, us or them, an eternal American debate.
Yeah, well, that in the debate, you rightly point out, that sort of is the debate right now in our political landscape. I told you in the break we're going to have to cut this short. I want to have you back, though, and we're going to talk about one of my personal heroes, Patrick Henry, in the discussion. The book is The Cause, The American Revolution, Its Discontents. I'm going to head home and get through another couple chapters tonight. Professor, we appreciate it. Thank you. Dan Abrams breaks down more of the Rittenhouse trial just in a couple of seconds. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.